Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of June 18th, 2024. Rocky and I were just chatting about kind of the state of comics, not a deep dive or what have you, but just a little bit about how the comics that are most exciting to us now are not coming from Marvel, they're not coming from DC. Um, and that's sort of reflected in this week of DC Comics. Even though there's some books here that are some of my favorite DC titles, Green Lantern War Journal, Wonder Woman, Nightwing's been fantastic in the past. We've loved Hellblazer, Dead in America. Um, Titans we've kind of struggled with. Batman's been, a good title. World's Finest has been a good title. I gotta say, I was extremely underwhelmed this week with these DC books, and maybe part of it, much like yourself, Rocky. I've been reading a lot of non Big Two stuff. I'm getting ready to do a big interview with the writers for the Star Trek books over IDW, so I've been rereading those, and they're just so much fun. I mean, if you're a Star Trek fan, it has just such a feel, especially a Star Trek fan like I am of that sort of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine era. It's been so much fun. The Energon universe. I just had an interview last week with Alex Antone, the editor on the G.I. Joe omnibus that's breaking records on Kickstarter. And granted, that's not the Energon version, but just dipping my toe in Skybound, their G.I. Joe stuff. They have the Destro that is in the Energon universe coming out soon. I'm going to be talking to Dan Waters. I'm going to have him on the show for the first time. So yeah, just the books that I'm reading that I'm having the most fun reading right now are not Big Two books. So when I had to pivot and read all this DC stuff the other day, I don't know if that factored in. And, I didn't struggle. I wouldn't say any of these books were a slog to get through, but none of them had me like really excited. I wasn't like, oh my God, so good. So that being said, I'm going to be chatting with Mark Waid about Absolute Power pretty soon. Maybe that'll get me fired up for DC for this big event. But it's going to be interesting, right? Like I've talked to Mark, a ton of times, but I've never had him on the show. It's going to be interesting. Like I certainly am not going to attack the man. Like, why'd you pick Amanda Waller? Amanda Waller's a piece of shit, and just press him on it. But, I've been a little bit like, I can't not talk about Amanda Waller. I'm going to, bring it up. It'd probably be my first question to get kind of his perspective on her as a character. But yeah, I say that only to say, like, I'm not sure what the malaise with the Big Two is right now. But I will note that for them, sales are down right now. I don't think comic book sales are down overall, year to year from last year. We know that in the pandemic that everybody had a little more, not everybody, but a lot of people had more disposable income. They were stuck at home. Comics kind of took off, especially back issue collecting, but sales were better. And they have come down from that high. But they've sort of stabilized, in the last couple of years. But this year, when you hear about the titles that are most exciting people, they're not Big Two titles, like there's not the hype like there was around the Krakoan Age of X-Men, for example. Yeah, it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time for sure. So what are your thoughts on DC this week?
Well, the simple fact of the matter is that when you start on a pattern of letting your top talent go elsewhere, and you're not hiring it, and they're going to go to the indies, because where else do you go if you're not working for Marvel or DC? And what do you, if you do have Marvel or DC, and frankly you don't pay the top wages anymore, you don't pay the top page rates, you don't pay, I mean, what happens? They go elsewhere, and it shows. And this has been something that has been gradual. We've talked about it, we've hinted at it. You and I certainly have not been as vocal. You've hinted at it more in some of your interviews with creators. You've touched on that, but you and I specifically in DC Weekly Review, we haven't really been getting too much into the weeds of the business of it too much. But the fact is that eventually, I mean, this stuff has a consequence. And, look, I think DC is better than I think DC is better right now than maybe some people will have some people believe. But at the same time, no, I was telling you, like I was telling you before we were on the air here, it was I had 12 comics this week that I purchased, and because and I had like 35 books that I bought, and 12 were on my top that I couldn't decide which one to read first. Not one was Marvel or a DC title. Not one. That says something, and it just goes to show it's not that these titles this week that we're going to review that all of them are bad. That's not the case. I mean, I was entertained by some of them, and we'll be getting into it. But it does have a consequence, and it is a gradual sort of decline. I'm reminded of that phrase "death by a thousand cuts." That's melodramatic, but it's sort of like if you edge away and you chip away at the overall quality and the feel and the excitement toward these events, and of the overall just the approach and the feel of these characters and the direction of the line and the lack of editorial oversight. It's gradual, and we've talked about it for years, but there's something, it's been more relentless, it's been gradual, and this has lasted longer, and there's a general feeling among our fellow collectors and even in the comic shops that something is off the rails here, and it's really, really disturbing. And whether it's DC, about the lack of sales at DC, or the lack of excitement over at Marvel, whether it's mainstream Amazing Spider-Man or their X-Men line, which seems to be directionless or under a lot of criticism anyway, with Marvel getting excitement for the Ultimate Marvel titles, well, then maybe we'll get something here in September. But I love Mark Waid. I look forward to your interview with him, and you and I have already said that Nicole Maines has been partially responsible for getting us excited and reinvigorated regarding Amanda Waller. Amanda Waller does seem to be she's growing on me as an A-level threat, and so let's see if Mark Waid can carry on from Nicole Maines and really give us an event, a summer event worth reading. And I'm hopeful and confident that he will. In Waid, I trust.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's such a big event. There are going to be other writers, but he is really the showrunner. But we'll see how it goes. To your point on DC losing talent, yeah, it's not all on them. You mentioned them paying. They don't pay the top page rates anymore. I think actually Bad Idea pays the top page rates for both writers and artists. But regardless, here's the thing, right? A lot of writers, once you dream of breaking in and writing, Spider-Man or Batman or Superman or whatever, you get a chance to do that. You break in with one of the big two, you kind of cut your teeth. But honestly, so many people are saving their best ideas for creator-owned work. And why wouldn't you? Because, you might have the next Walking Dead. You don't know. And if you make that for Marvel, you make that for DC, you don't own it, then you don't get a piece of the pie. So it's more than just the page rate. It has to do with the way royalties are and who owns the IP and that sort of thing. Like if your property becomes a movie and it's a big hit, why shouldn't you reap the rewards for that? We see things like Captain America Winter Soldier. I know this is going back a few years, but you see that doing really, really well. And Ed Brubaker gets a special thank you at the end of the movie, and that's it. He's not being monetarily compensated. So you can understand why a lot of the big names, if they are still doing work for the big two, they're also, Tom King's a perfect example. He was for the longest time, DC work, DC work, DC work, DC work. But now he's got plenty of other work outside DC at Image and Boom with Animal Pound and that sort of thing. Has a series at Dark Horse now, so you can understand why they do it, right? Because they make and they'll tell you, like, I make more from one issue of Animal Pound than I do from my entire run I wrote on Batman or whatever. So it's just the reality situation. We're not saying there's not talent. Jeremy Adams is still a name that gets me excited at DC. And I saw other people, not myself, other people praising Jeremy online the other day saying, man, he fixed Wally West. He's doing the same thing for Hal Jordan, making me love Hal Jordan. Man, don't let this guy get away. But that being said, you think Jeremy's not going to take advantage of being a known commodity now and come out with his own creator-owned book, at some point sooner than later, probably.
Exactly.
Of course he's going to do that. Why wouldn't he? So Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And then there's the whole AI kerfuffle that's been going on about a certain artist. I won't name him because I don't want to give him any press at all. Um, and then on the heels of that, they're saying, well, once the legal things are worked out, you think DC and Marvel, the big corporate books, won't or corporate companies won't just hire a writer to write a script and then feed that script into some art generating program, and just the whole book will be AI. If it goes that way, I will not be reading any books that are completely AI generated. I just won't. I just won't.
Yeah.
Bad enough that there's artists turning in AI assisted work right now. Um, but if
Yeah,
yeah, if it goes that way,
at the same time, I admit that I've been fooled. I've been fooled by AI before in terms of real life pictures. I'm sure at some point I'm going to be fooled by a comic book. It's just a matter
yeah,
of time,
it's true.
you know.
It's true. They're getting better. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the books this week. Up first, we have from the aforementioned Mark Waid, World's Finest, number 28. Waid is the writer, Dan Mora and Travis Mercer on art, Terry Von Vallon on color, Steve Wands on letters. Uh, Penultimate issue. I will say the art is fantastic as it's been throughout. Like Dan Mora, I mean, he's so much fun, especially when he's drawing these imp version of Jimmy Olsen. It's absolutely fantastic. And the tone of the series or tone of this arc has also been consistent throughout and works very very well for what it is. And what it is a fifth dimensional story, a Mixia's Pitalik story. This particular issue ends on a cliffhanger with Batman apparently just as he's about to give out his plan of how they're going to defeat this mightiest of imps that's attacking the Earth. He's basically disintegrated. Well, we know he's not really dead because it's Batman, but how is he going to get out of this one? We'll have to wait and see. The tone, the overall feel, the consistency of this story, as I said, has been very well done by Waid. It's technically a very, very good comic. Now, all that being said, I said this at the start. I said this when we talked about the World's Finest Annual, which was the first part of this story. I am not a fan of Mixia's Pitalik stories. I find one of the things about him, it's the same reason I'm not a big part of the reason I'm not a big fan of Amanda Waller when they make her this omniscient person. She becomes a plot device. Same reason I'm not a big fan of Magic, the Magic corner of the DC universe, because as a writer, if you write yourself into a corner, you can just have somebody literally snap their fingers. Oh, magic, and I fixed it. So for that reason, I've never been a big fan of Mixia's Pitalik stories. I'm not a fan of this story. I'm waiting for it to be over. I'm anxious for it to be over. So yeah, take that for what you will. That's just a personal preference. Is it a fun comic? Yes. Is it entertaining? Yes. Am I the audience for it? No, not at all. Like I said, this has been a title that's been really, really great, that I've really, really enjoyed at times. But I'm not really enjoying this arc. Again, nothing against the creative team. It's totally on me. If you are a fan of Mixia's Pitalik, I think you're probably just eating this up with a spoon. So, yeah. So anyway, as much as I am, trying to be objective about this, I will say though, this wasn't and hasn't been my favorite story of the arc so far. It's feeling like it's starting to drag a little, but again, that might just be me. I'm kind of, losing patience with it because I've been ready for it to be over for a few issues now, and it seems like it's dragging a little bit. But again, that might just be me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I enjoyed it. Well, I know from hearing your opinion, I have enjoyed it more than you. I have. I read DC Comics growing up, and I particularly read a lot of the 60s and 70s in the back issues when I was younger, particularly between the ages of 7 and 10. And so this reminds me of that, this sort of Silver Age sensibility, but in a modern day storytelling setting. And Mark Waid just does a great job doing that. I like that Jimmy Olsen, this imaginative character, and Jimmy Olsen has had a lot of crazy zany adventures, as Superman's best friend Jimmy Olsen in those comics, and whether he was Turtle Boy or any other of the zany adventures he got in. And so it kind of makes sense that Mixia's Pitlick gives Jimmy Olsen his powers, and he ends up being the champ. Jimmy Olsen is the chosen champion of Earth that has to battle this like Jokerized or this Joker imp from the sixth dimension. And meanwhile, Batmite has to be inspired by Batman and Superman in order to they need in order to come back from the sixth dimension. And there's what I like about Mark Waid is that. And not every writer can do this, but Mark Waid does this all the time. And he no matter what title he's working on, even if you don't like his approach, he always strives to make the characterizations and to make the plots make sense. And Mark Waid is very good at that. And so even we're dealing with sixth dimensional magic or fifth dimension, the laws of the fourth dimension, which is the third dimension that we live in. We know what two dimension is. We know what one dimension is. Mark Waid is playing with all of these things. And Batman, who has come from the sixth dimension, where there's space and time and other and everything in between, Batman has a plan. I think I might know what it is. I think that the final page here where Batman seemingly is destroyed, I think that we got to remember he's coming from the sixth dimension, which is, the fourth dimension is time. And so you add fifth and sixth to that. I think when he came back, I think this is all an illusion. It's misdirection. And I think it's part of Batman's plan with the help of Batmite. And I think this works very well. I love the characterization. Mark Waid gets all of these characterizations. He manages to maneuver so many characters are on here, and even a lot of the Justice League imps. The Justice League comes from the sixth dimension. So all of the I guess six-dimensional creatures from this sixth dimension are all end up coming into the fray as well. A lot of moving parts, a lot of moving characters, and Waid manages to give them all a voice that feels familiar to me. And I've been reading comics for 40 years. And so I can tell anyone who's maybe new to this is, you can rest assured he captures the voices of these characters. And it's just well done. It's just well done and very imaginative. And if you want to have a lot of fun from anywhere from the first to the sixth dimension, this is Mark Waid. He's really firing on all cylinders here, trying to convey all those different concepts into one story. And I think this works very well. Dan Moore's art's fantastic. It works really well. This is one of the more for me, one of the better comics this week. So because it's been very consistent. That's what I love about World's Finest. And this is a timeless tale. You can read this in 10 years and it's still going to read, if you like these types of stories, it's still, I think this is a timeless tale that you can enjoy this no matter what. And that's one of the central conceits of Silver Age tales, is that you can read them in any era and still get a sense of their fun and sensibility. And this is a prime example of that. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that last thing at the end there. Silver Age tales, continuity light in a way. And you can read them at any point, and they're going to make sense. And that has been a hallmark. We both mentioned how consistent this title's been. That's been a hallmark of his run on World's Finest, where it doesn't feel tied into any particular era of DC or you got to go make sure you're keeping up with what's happening in Flash or Green Lantern or Wonder Woman or whatever, and to see what's going on in World's Finest, even though he managed to tie it in with some of what Zdarsky did in Batman. And it was sort of a prelude to Lazarus Planet. We won't talk about the mess that was, but anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have John Constantine, Hellblazer, Dead in America #6 from writer Cy Spurrier, Aaron Campbell on art, Jordy Blair on colors, Steve Wands on letters. This has been a pretty consistent title as well. I, for one, have been enjoying it. Bit esoteric, as you would kind of expect from Cy Spurrier, and even though he's telling a Constantine story, he's been exploring, big ideas and, in a way, sort of commenting politically on the state of America. I suppose if there were somebody that were super conservative that was so inclined to read this, they'd probably dislike it because they'd be saying, "Man, this guy's being overly harsh or being critical of America." But all that being said, this is my least favorite issue of the series so far. it what I'll say about it is this: it advances the actual story a lot of what why Constantine's in the U.S., why he's doing what he's doing, um, what they're up to, him and his compatriots. Um, it advances all that a lot, but it's sort of like all the cool things that I've liked about it, all the concepts and you know legends of America and what have you that he has explored throughout the series that have made it interesting. All of that is sort of pushed to the wayside to all of a sudden give us a big push forward on the plot. So it when I objectively when I look at the story, it's like it's been the pacing is what is hasn't been consistent throughout the series, and this issue is a perfect example of that. So, it's not bad by any stretch, but yeah, like I said, it's definitely not my favorite issue of the series. Not by a long shot. So, by Rocky's chuckle, I have a feeling he's gonna say this is the best issue of the series so far. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
Oh man, I had a lot of fun this issue. I actually quite enjoyed this issue. There is, I wish I could go. There's so much I want to say about this issue. I will say that I like the idea. They pitched up another hitchhiker. I mean, this is an appropriate title, Hellblazer, Dead in America. Why is it Dead in America? Because Hellblazer is dead. John Constantine is actually dead. He's a rotting corpse. And meanwhile, he's traveling across America on this like British like double-decker bus, and he's looking for the grains of the Sandman because they were stolen by Dr. Diablo. And in this particular issue, one of the hitchhikers that they pick up is this character by the name of Iggy Ballot. And Iggy Ballot is a comic book writer, and he was at one point infected by one of the grains of the Sandman, and he became obsessed with stories. Because if you make, as John Constantine says in this issue, if you make someone see the world differently through stories, the world just plays along. And that's magic in a nutshell. And that's what he says. But unfortunately, this Iggy character is a real piece of garbage. And he's not a very good character. And he becomes addicted to the sand. And he breaks the fourth wall because he's a very powerful storyteller called a metamancer, which is this magical storyteller. And as the story is told, as the story progresses, at various times in the story, Iggy breaks the fourth wall and reaches into other panels to try to steal some of the grain. First, he steals Constantine's cigarettes by reaching into another panel. Then he steals a grain of sand, and it gets stolen back. And meanwhile, Constantine just hates this guy. And Iggy says at one time, and this is by far the best line in the comic book, and I have to do this quote by quote. Iggy says, when he talks about he never dared swallow the grain, the sand of this, the grain of the sand, like the grain of sand from Morpheus. He says, but I never dared swallow one of the grains, the changes, the agonies. Instead, I dwindled and I became this. And John Constantine cuts him off and finishes his sentence and says, oh, you became a self-abusing, homophobic, racist, parasitic C-word, slurping on dead stories and shitting out echoes. I mean, the language in this story, one of my frustrations with Suspiria in this series has also been simultaneously one of the compliments I can give him is that it's the language used by Constantine. The language here in the dialogue has been so. I mean, the insults that are laden in this issue with talking back and forth and the metaphors and the descriptors and the adjectives. I mean, he knows Constantine in a way that I sometimes get confused with the British dialect or the lower class British dialect, if that's what it is here. My apologies if I'm not describing that correctly. But I really enjoyed how this character called Iggy, it creates this character called the Toll, which is this vigilante redheaded woman who ends up even attacking him at the end. And at the end, Iggy tries to steal a grain of sand from Constantine, but Constantine steals it back and then shoves it down his throat, sort of killing him and vaporizing him, and ultimately unfortunately, Constantine ends up getting shot by this Toll character, this which was the creature of Iggy's story, and he ends up getting shot at the end. But he's not that it has a big effect on Constantine because he's already dying because of the events in the previous series, and he ends up disappearing at the end because frankly, this other character, Dr. Diablo, whose patient was this Iggy character, Dr. Diablo, shows up at the end and then ultimately disappears with Constantine. And so I thought a lot happens in this issue, and it sort of brought everything home to me, and in a way that I thought it was hilarious and entertaining. This is actually, for me, one of my candidates for pick of the week, believe it or not. I had that much fun with this issue. So anyways, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And yeah, other than that one issue, I needed you to help explain to me. I've been really enjoying this series.
Yeah, I'm glad you did mention the meta-ness of it, right? There's several times where Constantine says, I told you I don't want to put up with this meta crap. Because, the reaching through different panels that Iggy does and Constantine does, that was pretty cool. I will admit that. But yeah, for me, it's just the pacing, the inconsistency of pacing with this book is my only criticism. I'm still enjoying it overall. I still can't wait to see how it ends. And I think it'll be one of those things where if you read this story that Spurrier's telling, if you read it all in one, I don't think those pacing issues will be as apparent. So, all right, let's move on. Up next, we have Green Lantern War Journal, issue number 10. This is from writer Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Montos, colors by Adriano Lucas, letters by Dave Sharp. Similarly, this is my least favorite issue of this series so far as well, one that I've been enjoying a lot. But I sort of feel like nothing really happens in this issue. Like, I can't look at this issue and go, oh yeah, here's what happened, or here's what, like, nothing really happens. Lantern Shepherd, I guess, gets rescued by Guy Gardner. I can say that happens. John Stewart's mother gets attacked by sort of an echo of the Spirit of Olgrin, or Revenant Queen, what have you. But other than that, I can't really point to a lot that happens in this issue. So yeah, maybe this is going to be one of those times where you're explaining to me what's going down. So yeah, I just, the art was as fantastic as it usually is, but the story, it just felt a little lacking for me this particular issue. What do you think of it?
Unfortunately, it's not coming up on the screen here. I can't seem to access it, but if it pops up, I'll put it on the screen. But I actually, here it is. Sorry about that. So I apologize to people listening on the podcast. When we do this on YouTube, I try to, I have mastered the art, or in vain, I tell myself I've mastered the art of managing these pages and talking at the same time. I just can't chew gum while I'm doing it. But in any event, Green Lantern War Journal. I have to admit, when I first initially read this, I was frustrated with it because I couldn't remember, and you actually were confused as well. At least I infer that from what you said. I wasn't sure, is the Revenant Queen the one that is attacking Shirley Stewart, or is it the Olgrins, the spirit of the Olgrin that is attacking John Stewart in that other dimension that he's in? And there's also, well, let me just summarize it this way. And part of my frustration here, and you could probably get it in my voice, is I feel that PKJ is, I feel that I feel a little bit off every time I read an issue, and this will absolutely, I'm sure, read better as a trade, because I always feel a little bit off trying to figure out what's going on. It looks like the Revenant Queen, it's the Revenant Queen, or a aspect of the Revenant Queen, is attacking to try to kill John Stewart's mother, Shirley, who he left his AI construct, or ring construct, Ellie, to protect. And meanwhile, we have Lantern's Shepherd, who's been attacked by the Green Lanterns and the ring bearers of the United Planets. And then we have John Stewart himself has an adventure in the Dark Star of the Fen, where one of the children of the Dark Star of the Fen has made him a ring, and now he's got two rings. He's got his Green Lantern ring, which was already a Green Lantern ring, and also a ring that he got. He already had a ring from one of the previous Revenant Queen lanterns, and now he's got another ring from one of the children of Olgrin, I think, in this Dark Star of the Fen. And I don't understand it. I note with the lettering that in John Stewart seems to talk in a different voice at one point, and when he talks in it, John Stewart talks in a voice with the word bubbles that are black with white ink, with white lettering, and he's talking to this creature, or this child character in the Dark Star dimension, and then the Revenant Queen, or this Star Shroud, speaks in the same colored word bubbles when it's attacking Shirley Stewart. And I'm not sure if they're related in some way, or if they're disconnected. I'm confused. I'm not sure why PKJ he's got John Stewart, John Stewart in the Dark Star dimension fighting the spirit of Olgrin, and then we have the Revenant Queen fighting against just Shirley Stewart and Steel on Earth. And meanwhile, we have Guy Gardner, who shows up to rescue Lantern Shepherd, because, just to remind people, Guy Gardner is still he's still in good with the United Planets. The United Planets, Guy Gardner apparently hasn't betrayed the United Planets yet. He's still one of the Lanterns they don't know that Guy Gardner is probably not on their side, because we know Guy Gardner in the pages of Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern is supposed to be in the bottle city of Kolu, but he's not. He must have escaped, and then that's when he got the message from Lantern Shepherd to go and rescue here. So that's where I think there's an overlap. And so that's what's happening now. My frustration with this is I'm not sure exactly how all this is supposed to be connected. This really feels almost like three separate stories. It feels like we've got Revenant Queen, who doesn't seem all that powerful. She's supposed to be more powerful than this. She destroyed an entire planet, or killed all the heroes on another Earth in another dimension, and now she's just here and she's making a big deal out of killing John Stewart's mother. It seems kind of small scale. And is barely holding her own against Steel. And then John Stewart's not even in this dimension, or not even on Earth. He's in another dimension fighting the spirit of Olgrin. And it's like, why? They feel like disconnected. How are they related, these storylines? I'm not really seeing it. And it feels, the emotional core of this story was his mother and Ellie. I mean, you could have just focused on that. That was enough. And then you could have the United Planets come with Lantern Shepherd, and focus on that, and then connect more to the Jeremy Adams storyline. I don't like playing the comparison game. I think that's unfair to PKJ. I think PKJ's done a a decent enough job here, I guess. But I can't help but to compare a little bit. Jeremy Adams has just made his story more cool. It's just more cool. There's just more action, and it's more cool, and it's easier to follow. This is messy, and this is dragged on so much. And for what? I don't care about Olgrin. That was a mythology that it took me, at times it almost took me out of the Mongol title for Superman that he wrote. Getting too much embroiled in mythology that should be, if you're not, it's messy. It's not bad. The art by Montos is still fantastic. It's really good, but I really would like this to be brought in, this story to be brought in, because I feel like we got sort of three separate storylines, and it's just been kind of messy. And I really want this. It hasn't really feel as focused as I want it to feel. I'm still involved in it. I still like it, and it's still connected enough to. But to what's going to be happening with the United Planets. But I just think with the Revenant Queen being a potential threat, we know the Revenant Queen is a threat. We have the United Planets who are corrupted. Why do we need Darkstar the Fen? It was just, why do we need Olgren? And why give Jon Stewart 2 rings? I mean, I would have hoped PKJ. I wish he would have learned something from reading Jeffrey Thorne's run, where don't throw so much plot and stuff onto this character, because it just doesn't work. It's the number one complaint against Jeffrey Thorne's run, is that was too convoluted, and this I fear that this is bordering on that for me right now. I'm venting a little bit, ranting a little bit. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same. We really praise PKJ, and rightly so, for his ability to really world build. And in a way, a lot of what is in this story is what is stuff that comes out of what he did in his War World run. You know, Olgren and that sort of thing. So in a way, he's kind of completing that story. Problem is, if you don't have context for that, you're not really going to understand what's going on. And it's also a little bit of an awkward fit, because that was a Superman story. This was a John Stewart Green Lantern story. And it doesn't fit seamlessly. I'm sure, if we sat down with PKJ, over a drink, and he kind of explained it to us, we'd be like, oh yeah, that's awesome, whatever. But it's one of the limitations of the comic medium, right? That a lot of that stuff, it's probably in the script, and it might be there on the page in a way, but it might be there on the page in such a way where it's kind of hard to see it if you aren't the one creating it. You're not realizing that this little thing in the corner that's drawn, or this little reference here or there, can be missed. So still enjoying it, but yeah, it's this issue just felt a little bit messy. It sort of felt like this issue wasn't necessary, because, like I said, not enough happened to really make it feel like, oh yeah, this was a really important part of the story. So all right, well, moving on. Up next, we have Wonder Woman number 10, Sacrifice Finale. Tom King is the writer. Daniel Semper is the artist. Tomeu Morey on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. Kind of the final effort here for the Sovereign to break Wonder Woman. This time he's going to try to physically break her using the Cheetah. So how well it went is a matter of debate. What are your thoughts on this, Rocky?
This is another one where I talked to myself in preparation of how I would say my opinion on this review. I really did. And I'm just gonna end up winging it. I'm waiting for the PDFs to pop up here, but I was quite disappointed in this issue. Straight up, I wasn't. It didn't really resonate with me very well. First of all, as has been established already, Mr. Magoo, I mean the Sovereign, is trying to break Wonder Woman, and rather than just defeat her, he wants to humiliate her, which he's already done. He really has. He's humiliated her. He's isolated her. He's given her the company of rats. He's had her humbled and beaten by all her rogues gallery. And so he's managed to successfully do that. Just because Wonder Woman has managed to endure all of it, but she still had to endure it. So I guess he's made his point. And the Sovereign in this issue wants to have the Cheetah attack Wonder Woman. The problem with having the Cheetah attack Wonder Woman is that it just really doesn't make a lot of sense. Because number one, Cheetah's not her most powerful enemy. Sorry, she's not. Know your continuity, Tom King. It was Grail, and we already got that. We already got that battle. And the battle here with Cheetah, in my view, doesn't make a lot of sense, because Cheetah, Tom King kind of understands one thing about Cheetah, but he kind of doesn't. The one thing he kind of understands is that Cheetah isn't really the arch enemy of Wonder Woman anymore. She really isn't. She was the ally of Wonder Woman in Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad's run. She's actually she's just as much an ally half the time as a villain. And she's just misunderstood. Cheetah is a villain of Wonder Woman that is broken. And that really comes through here. interesting in the narration that the Sovereign indicates that Wonder Woman and one other person are the only people that managed to resist the lasso of lies. I'm quite certain that he means the Cheetah. So I believe it's both Cheetah and Wonder Woman have resisted the lasso of lies, because Tom King really tries to prop up through the narration of the Sovereign that I'm sick of already. That the Cheetah and Wonder Woman are the only ones to resist the lasso of lies. The problem with that is that if Cheetah has successfully resisted the lasso of lies, then why is she attacking Wonder Woman? Why? And moreover, Tom King's trying to make a point here, and I'm not really sure what it is, but the big central conceit of this is the Sovereign expected Wonder Woman to defeat the Cheetah. And then presumably, I'm guessing, he says this right in the narrative, he was expecting Wonder Woman to defeat the Cheetah, but that's not what happened. Wonder Woman is defeated. But apparently it surprised the Sovereign that the Cheetah, rather than killing Wonder Woman, lets Wonder Woman live. The Cheetah doesn't finish Wonder Woman off. Which, really, what the hell is the point of having a Wonder Woman villain who won't kill her when given the chance? If I sound like a little bit like a jerk saying that, I don't care. I mean, Cheetah isn't really a villain unless she's going to kill Wonder Woman if given the opportunity. To me, it was like, so what's the point of having the Cheetah and they're having this big battle? Why? Why are they fighting? It's never really explained why they're fighting. They're fighting why? Why is the Cheetah fighting? It does fighting for the sake of fighting. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to this narrative, and it's really, really frustrating. And to top it off, when at the end when the Cheetah decides not to kill Wonder Woman, then they have this talk as if suddenly they're so close. And the Cheetah says to Wonder Woman that, oh, I know you better than anyone. No, you don't. You know Wonder Woman like the Joker knows Batman. And if you think the Joker knows Batman, okay. But the Cheetah really knows Wonder Woman that well? And so much so that they just finished, almost killing each other. The Cheetah could have killed Wonder Woman, decides not to, because they've done this before 1,000 times. And so then Wonder Woman decides, what does Wonder Woman do? Well, she cries. She cries on the shoulder of Cheetah because she has to be so strong, so strong. And I guess she's just tired and exhausted of being, she's just tired and exhausted. I know what the intention of this issue is. I understand. I think that Tom King is trying to show that Wonder Woman allowed herself to be captured, at least in the mind of the Cheetah, so that because she feels she needed to rescue Cheetah. In fact, Cheetah even says that to her, that you allowed yourself to be captured so you could rescue me. That doesn't make any sense if that is the case. It can't be the case, as a matter of fact, because Wonder Woman, for some reason, Wonder Woman, it's implied she has this big plan, that all this was a plan of Wonder Woman. She let herself get caught. I argue that doesn't make sense given the narrative. Why? Because, she let herself get caught. I don't know. I watched that fight with Grail. Wonder Woman was exhausted. Wonder Woman was legitimately exhausted and she passed out. Okay, but she let herself get caught. Wonder Woman doesn't know the Sovereign. She knows nothing about the Sovereign that we know of. She has no idea what his plans are at all. There's no evidence that she knows anything about the Sovereign. Now, maybe in a future issue, Tom King will tell us that, I guess Wonder Woman knew all this about the Sovereign. But how did she know about it? This feels so forced, and so it doesn't feel like it's flowing naturally. And it's frustrating to me. Also, at the end of this issue, Wonder Woman and the Cheetah, who must be monitored by the Sovereign. The Sovereign is keeping eyes on them. And bear in mind, the Sovereign is narrating this, telling this story to Trinity 19 years in the future. So he's narrating this story. Wonder Woman and the Cheetah are rescued by the Wonder Girls. Now, let's talk about the Wonder Girls. This is even more amusing. At the beginning of this, the Wonder Girls, I think Tom King was doing this because he was trying to be funny. And I'm going to try to keep my sarcasm here to a minimum, but it's going to be tough. Donna Troy, Yara Flor, and Cassie Sandsmark at the beginning are staring at an invisible jet at the beginning on the first page. You can say that's kind of amusing. What becomes ridiculous is, number one, their dialogue is unbelievably empty. These are three women who they'd have to know that Wonder Woman's life is at stake. If they don't think that if they're not going to take this seriously, if they're just going to joke and utter the phrases and the nonsense and the ridiculous dialogue that is relating throughout this issue, if they're not going to take this seriously, it's a big joke to them, then I don't. Why should I take it seriously? By the way, I don't, because the Sovereign is a joke. He's Mr. Magoo. And another reason not to take the villain seriously, the Sovereign, is because the Sovereign has been reminding us since issue 1 that he loses. In the very first panel of issue 1, the Sovereign has said, "We lost. This is the story of how she defeated us," quote unquote. So the narrator, who is the villain himself, keeps reminding us that he's lost, that he's going to lose. And so from the beginning, the Sovereign is kind of a joke. And the narrative is never something that Tom King seems to take all that serious. And even in this issue, he's more concerned with having these 3 Wonder Girls. First of all, Donna Troy is so stupid. I mean, and again, Donna Troy is not this stupid, but she's written this stupid so Tom King can make a joke that she bumps into an invisible plane because it's invisible, so naturally she walks into it. Donna Troy has flown the invisible jet before, numerous times. But hey, you can say to me, "Oh, comic boom, Rocky, get off. What are you doing? Relax, it's a joke," right? I mean, she doesn't even know how to start it, and she accidentally pushes the ejection seat. So this is a comedic moment. It's a comedic moment. They're not trying to rescue. I mean, it's not a big deal. Time's not of the essence. You're just trying to rescue Wonder Woman from being killed from the Cheetah. But of course, you don't know that. You're not taking it seriously. Yara Flores casting insults. Cassie's being a smartass. None of them are taking this seriously. This whole thing is a joke. It's a joke. And I can't take this seriously. I can't. It doesn't feel like anything's at stake. And I want to point out something. Now, in fairness to Tom King, and this is what Tom King has actually done, but it hasn't been in service of a story. What he has done is he has wanted to exemplify an aspect of Wonder Woman from issue 1. What he did in issue 4, he exemplified Wonder Woman's compassion by showing compassion to with a kid with cancer. He exemplified Wonder Woman's truth with the lasso of lies in issue 8. He exemplifies her empathy last issue with when she was isolated. He exemplified her hope and love in this issue, where she shows hope and love as opposed to sadness and pity for the Cheetah. He exemplified her shopping skills for Batman's birthday in issue 6. It's the only thing I could think of. He exemplified Wonder Woman's history, Amazonian history, and her general philosophy in issue 1. And he exemplified her fighting skills in issues 2 when she fought the military and issue 5 when she fought the rogues. So I want to give a compliment to Tom King that he has exemplified many of the aspects of what makes Wonder Woman great. So I want to give that compliment to him. He has. But what he has failed to do, in my respectful opinion, is that he's failed to craft it in an interesting overall narrative. And he's made the same mistake with Wonder Woman that I respectfully submit he did with his Batman run as well, where his Batman run had a lot of interesting individual issues with individual great artists. But the narrative as a whole fell apart. And in my opinion, that's what's happening here. So beautiful art by Daniel Sampere, my friend. Daniel Sampere, you're the best artist in the business. Absolutely amazing art. Truly epic, gorgeous. I just wish it was in service of a better overall story. But in terms of understanding aspects of who Wonder Woman is, Tom King, you understand most of it, yes. But I just wish the story was more compelling. And that's it in a nutshell. So I'm really interested to hear your opinion on this.
I really could not possibly disagree with you more. Now, granted that this is the weakest of the 3 issues with the Sovereign putting Wonder Woman through the trials. It's the weakest by far. Like, her using her, relationships and her compassion and what have you to get through the isolation, and how that showcased her relationship and her love for Steve Trevor was arguably more interesting than this, as was her devotion to the truth, where she broke the lasso of lies. That was really interesting. You could make the argument that we don't really understand the lasso of lies well enough and what have you. And I sort of get that. And again, it all comes down to that challenge that comic book writers face, where there's not always enough space on the page. But you're saying, how can we take this seriously? Like, this is a best-selling title. People love it. It's okay in a title like this to have some fun. And I really enjoyed the comedic aspects of the three Wonder Girls, if you will. I will correct you. It was not Donna Troy that walked into the invisible jet. It was Cassie Sandsmark that bumped her head on it. It is an invisible jet. I don't care if you've seen it before or not. You could bump into it. That's a thing that could happen. It was funny. Yes,
Yeah.
Donna Troy has flown it before, but maybe it's been a while since she's flown it. Maybe she doesn't, remember, and so she hit the eject button, whatever. I thought it was funny. Um, and I get your sarcasm of saying, yeah, why should they be in a hurry, whatever. It all goes back to this central idea that you won't accept the fact that Wonder Woman allowed herself to be captured. Did she have an epic fight with Grail? Yes. Was she tired? Yes. Does that mean that she could not possibly have faked passing out to allow herself to be captured? Or, allowed the fight to go on longer, pulled her a punch here or there to allow the fight to go on longer, to actually know that she would be exhausted and would pass out and the Sovereign would capture her? I'm not willing to say no. Wonder Woman wouldn't do that. She couldn't possibly have been one step ahead of the Sovereign. We didn't know who the Sovereign was. She didn't know who the Sovereign was. She was probably running out of, time and opportunities to, like, how can I find out who this guy is? How can I confront him? How can I defeat him when I can't even find him? I'm going to let myself be captured. I don't know when that will happen, but we know she talked to the Wonder Girls previous, so that could have been okay. If I'm ever actively confronted or there's the opportunity, I'm going to allow myself to be captured, and then when that happens, you guys can track me down, blah blah blah, whatever. I have no problem believing that could have been the case, that could have been the way this all went down. I don't know why we have to say, only Batman would be able to plan something like that. Wonder Woman's not smart enough to have planned something like that? I totally think she is. So, yeah, I easily could see that being the case. Now, if you want to say it doesn't make sense, her relationship with the cheetah, whatever, yeah, that's a little bit where this kind of falls down for me. I don't, I mean, we've talked before in the past about the cheetah and who she is and how she relates to Wonder Woman, what have you. And it's not a straightforward relationship, I guess is how we could put it. Um, but I can't sit here and say that I completely understand where Tom King is, coming from with this. Um, as far as why she would attack, I mean, it seems to me that he's trying to say that it's almost like the cheetah aspect, because he does talk about other previous cheetahs in the past. So the cheetah aspect of Barbara Minerva, whatever she's, cursed with or what have you, is sort of like the instinctual part. So as soon as Wonder Woman gets on the island, she attacks her, whatever. When she has a chance to actually stop and think about what she's doing, they stop fighting, but that takes days to happen. So yeah, it's a little wonky. It's a little clunky, their relationship. And this is Tom King's not the first one to have explored their relationship in this way, that it's not a arch villain and a hero kind of relationship. Um, but I don't in any way say, okay, it's Joker to Batman. Their relationship is not that. Maybe it was that back in the Golden Age, maybe even at the beginning of the Silver Age, but certainly in modern times, it's never been, Joker, Batman, Cheetah, Wonder Woman. It's just not. Cheetah has become a much more complicated character for decades, since George Perez, I think, got his hands on her. So you're comparing apples to oranges when you do that. But I do admit it feels a little wonky, their relationship. It doesn't feel fleshed out. It doesn't feel explained to somebody who's picking this up for the first time. I could see them being sort of confused on why the cheetah wouldn't take Wonder Woman out when she has a chance. But as far as would Wonder Woman allow herself to be captured um, to rescue the cheetah? I mean, yes, she would. Is it maybe stretch a little bit to say she wanted to let the Sovereign capture her so she could confront the Sovereign? I don't think so. Did she want the Sovereign to capture her so she could rescue Cheetah? It's Yeah, you're stretching a little bit more there. I feel like more like it. Hey, the Sovereign captured the Cheetah. I don't know who the Sovereign is. I don't know where the Cheetah is. I need to confront the Sovereign. I'm going to let him capture me, and hopefully that will lead me to rescuing the Cheetah as well as confronting and defeating the Sovereign. I don't have any problem with any of that. Where I have a problem is similar to your complaint. It just the relationship between Wonder Woman and Cheetah. It's not explained enough. And again, it might just be a problem of space, right? Like it's a complicated relationship. To explain it all in one issue just might not be necessarily something that you're able to do. Uh, but overall, I'm enjoying the series. I definitely way more than you are. You talk about the narrative falling apart and not being compelling. I could not disagree more. It's super compelling. This is one of my candidates for book of the week. I'm enjoying it. We don't need to talk about the Down Empire art because it's absolutely perfect. It's perfection. It's perfect. It's absolutely amazing, and it elevates the story. It elevates the book. It's everything I could want in
You want to
visual
talk about
story.
the backup?
Yeah, the backups just they're fun. Like they tend to be fun. It's Tom King writing. Belen Ortega handles the art. And in this one, Trinity, Wonder Woman's daughter, is struggling to fly a kite. And again, there's a lot of comedy in these backups, and you can tell Belen is having a lot of fun drawing them as well. So John and Damian go back and forth with their usual bickering, trying to help her fly the kite. Neither of them are actually able to get it in the air. John goes flying off with it, but Cassie's holding on to the string. He's way off the ground. Damian saying, "Oh, you just throw it like a batarang or a robin or a row boomerang, and you can get it off the ground, no problem." And he struggles with it as well. So what do? They go and break out Kite Man, because of course Kite Man's able to get the kite off the ground. So yeah, it's fun. It's what it's supposed to be fun. It succeeds on that level, and yeah, I'm really really enjoying the backups for sure. What are your thoughts on the backups?
Yeah, the backup is a lot of fun. The backup's a lot of fun, and my again, my criticism of the backup has nothing actually to do with the backup. They're fun stories. I just as I'm the annoying continuity guy in the background saying, how come Damien and Connor appear so old? I mean, or so young. They should be older than this. But that's a nitpick. I think that DC very clearly wants to. They're going to have to make them younger. They're going to because we need to have these characters closer in age. Because frankly, I want future stories with a young daughter of Wonder Woman, a young Trinity, and a young Damian, and a young John Kent. Sorry, I said Connor. But a young John, a young Damian, a young Trinity. I would prefer that they were all the same age, quite frankly, because I think it would just make for better stories in the long run for legacy characters to be more consistent. But no, in terms of a story, Belen Ortega as an artist, I mean, it really is growing on me. She really does. It's art that I took some getting used to for me, but she's very good at making this funny. The humor of these stories, of these backups, is enhanced by the style of her art, and it really works well. There's no question about it. And to see Kite Man, I mean, it's not too often. The only thing, this is probably the only appearance of Kite Man where he doesn't say hell yeah.
I did think when Damian gives his philosophy on life to Trinity, I wonder if that might not come back at some point, because we've seen Trinity. She hasn't been particularly likable when we saw her, but when Damien was given his philosophy, I was like, oh my God, that's pretty brutal, right?
Yeah.
Like the lesson here is to acknowledge the world has no meaning. Religion, morality, family, friends, even kites are all worthless. I was like,
Yeah.
geez, man, she's like 4 years old, Damien.
That's like Batman 666 coming up.
Yeah, pull your jets, dude. Like, yeah. So, anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Catwoman number 66. Tinny Howard is the writer. Ivan Shavrin does the art and colors for pages 1 through 11. Carmine Di Giandomenico handles the art for pages 12 through 22. Veronica Gandini handles the colors for those pages 12 through 22. Tom Napolitano on letters. It's Catwoman 9 Lives Part 8. I did enjoy this issue, but much like several of the recent story arcs that have been going on in DC Comics. Feels like it's dragging on a little too long. Like, I get it, right? Like, it's Catwoman 9 lives. Why would you not have 9 parts? Well, it doesn't exactly make it easy to divide it up for the trade, I suppose. You have to have an oversized trade to collect all 9 parts, to have somebody read it all in one, or somebody's got to buy 2 trades where half of the trade doesn't have anything to do with this, and then how do you get them to line back up? I don't know. Maybe it'll go to 12 parts. I'm not really sure. It's had some interesting ideas. I think we've actually compared this, if I'm remembering correctly, to Tom King's Batman run at various times, about how, yeah, it just seems to be dragging on a little bit too long, but the concept is good, right? Like this idea of Catwoman having 9 lives and why she got 9 lives. So come to find out, all the stuff that's been going on with Catwoman communing with some sort of cat god or whatever that gifted her these lives, and that's why she's been able to come back to life or whatever, it might all be in her head. Well, how could that be? Well, you know what else is in her head? A piece of the meteorite that fell to Earth and impacted Gotham City at the end of the Batman Catwoman war. And that has been slowly poisoning Catwoman to where if she doesn't get it out of her head, she's going to die. So we know that meteor crashed into maybe what's the last Lazarus pit in the DC universe. We know, Lazarus resin, I guess, or the liquid of the Lazarus pits or what have you, has properties that can make people immortal, bring you back to life. Ra's al Ghul used it for centuries. So that, again, is a really cool idea. And the fact that she might have this, piece of the fragment with Lazarus resin or whatever in her head, that's why she has been resurrected, would mean a couple of things. So she doesn't actually have 9 lives. As long as that stays in her head, she's immortal until that thing that's in her head actually is the thing that kills her. But any other death from extraneous circumstances, she would survive. But the thing is poisoning her, and she's going to die that way. So again, that's a great idea. But we have to go to execution. We have to go to pacing. It's been inconsistent. It's been up and down. But I do appreciate this idea and what's going on. And I got to say, I like it more than the idea of some cat god giving her this idea. Now, her decisions, we've talked about this before, her decisions on what she's gone after, what she's been willing to risk her life for, that's been wildly up and down as well. And it doesn't really portray like a consistent characterization of who Selina is. Now, her going after the radioactive sludge at Chernobyl and wanting that not to exist in the world, that feels like something Selina would do. Going and taking out the number one assassin in the world, that feels like something Selina would do. Some of the other things, going into space, what have you, I guess sort of, but yeah, it has. But working with Amanda Waller, that just doesn't feel like something Selina would ever do. So yeah, it's just been a little bit inconsistent. It feels like it's gone on a little bit too long, and only adding to the feeling of inconsistency has been the art. We've had so many different artists on this book, and a lot of times we have multiple artists on the same issue, like we do here, and the art styles are wildly different as well. So that hasn't helped. So maybe with a consistent artist who's been on the book throughout, it would have given it a little bit more consistent feel and helped Tinny out a little bit. I don't blame her for that at all. But yeah, you just wonder, like, Catwoman going underwater to rescue a documentary director. It feels a little wonky. It feels a little awkward at times. But the big ideas have been fun. The other thing that I love about this issue is, despite their, I guess we'll call it a falling out in the Batman Catwoman war, the falling out that Selina had with Scandal Savage, where they're working together, and we can argue about, again, the characterization, the consistency of characterization, with Selina allowing herself to go mope in prison for a little while and feel guilty for killing Valmont, but then change her mind and put together a crew and break out. Yeah, again, inconsistent characterization there. But the relationship with Scandal Savage was a highlight of that, I thought. And then again, I can kind of understand why Scandal might, we'll say, betray Selena during the Catwoman Batman war, just because of the added factor of her father, where it's a very complicated relationship or what have you. Even though it again feels a little inconsistent with what we saw of Scandal Savage and her characterization previous. But I like that they're back together in this issue. I like that they're working together. I hope that she continues to be, Scandal Savage, that is, continues to be a supporting character for Catwoman, because I think like Dario and like Iko, she's Amiko, she's a really interesting character, and she's probably not a strong enough character to stand on her own. I certainly don't think a Scandal Savage series or miniseries is going to sell at all, but she's interesting enough that I want to see more of her, and so I think her as a supporting character in a Catwoman book is a perfect place for her. So overall, yeah, I thought this issue was okay. This might be another one of those times where I'm just not going to be able to judge the entirety of this story arc until it's all said and done. But I do admit that the idea of Catwoman having a piece of that Lazarus meteor in her head gives me hope that this is better than I thought it was. Because again, the whole idea of a cat god, yeah, not really for me. Maybe it's because I'm just not that religious or spiritual. So give me a scientific explanation and I like it a lot more. So anyway, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I appreciate I'd rather have her have a piece of that meteor stuck in her head so that it can be removed and we could move on from this storyline that hasn't really gone to as many interesting places as I wish it could have. So much of the potential for this concept, I think, was squandered on just not very good ideas, to be honest. I just because none of the ideas that Selena had in terms of what she would do if she only had 9 lives, all of them were just they were disconnected from her history. There was nothing that was truly related to. She's got a rich 50-year history of rogues galleries, and none of them were involved in any of what her final wishes would be for her final 9 lives. And it just instead Teenie Howard, who I can appreciate, she wanted to come up with her own ideas, but unfortunately they're not as interesting as the history of Catwoman. And this is I'm hinting at a larger sort of topic here when I say that if you're going to write a character like Catwoman with a rich history, and then you're supposed to come up with 9 things, her last 9 heists that she thinks that she's always wanted to do, to have no affiliation with any of her past big heists, big storylines, is just, I think, just crazy. You owe it to the character to refer back to some of those larger storylines, and that wasn't really done here. But that's a nitpick. I share all your comments about the lack of consistency here. I actually enjoyed this issue because this is actually a story that finally, this makes a little bit of sense here, where Selena is utilizing. I mean, it's interesting that at the beginning she has a dream of her talking to the Bast goddess. And maybe that's, like you said, that was just maybe a figment of her imagination, telling her that, that maybe it's not a goddess, maybe it's this thing that's just lodged in your head. That's interesting. I like that Selena wants to set up Santa Espada and Flamingo by having Scandal Savage contact as Santa Espanada and Flamingo, and basically try to sell them an unconscious Selena to take, because they know that we know that Santa Espada, Flamingo, and Sea Wasp are all looking to take down Selena. And I like the fact that Selena and Scandal Savage know that and basically set Santa Espada and Flamingo up to try to, get money from them to actually essentially buy, the big score. To buy the big score is Selena herself, to purchase the unconscious body of Selena Kyle, and that way Flamingo can do whatever he wants. Santa Espada can do whatever she wants. And I like the fact that Selena was playing them off against each other, and to great effect. And that at the end, when everything falls apart, then there's still the final, Selena Kyle still has a plan, because everything falls apart at the end. But she says to Espada and Flamingo, look, I reported you to Sea Wasp, Felicity Viceroy, otherwise known as Sea Wasp. She knows that you try to betray her by coming after me and without telling her. So instead, since you're wanted, you're going to be wanted and likely killed by Sea Wasp anyway. Why don't we rob the Sea Wasp? And that's going to be next issue. And and it's like, leave it. So kudos to Teenie Howard. She kind of put lipstick on the pig here of the storyline. I kind of like where this is going. Like, this is exactly what Selena Kyle would do, making, putting cherry on the top of a very messy Sunday, saying, well, okay, it fell apart. I can't get money out of Flamingo or Espada, but why don't we all rob the bitch we all hate and that's now trying to kill you thanks to me? So I thought it actually worked fairly well, and I liked the way Tina Howard wrapped this up. And I do want to give her props because I didn't like the 9 Lives. I didn't like the idea of a bast goddess. I'm glad hopefully that's not happening at all. And we can just attribute that to the meteor, which could eventually be taken out of Selena, and we could move on and sort of restore the status quo when this is all said and done. But overall, this was not the, it was better than a lot of the past 9 Lives issues.
Yeah, you do kind of wonder, right? Like, you're talking about how Catwoman set up Espada and set up Pink Flamingo. And now they're kind of screwed because they either have to join forces with Selena and go against the Sea Wasp, or the Sea Wasp is going to murder them, basically. Yeah. Like you said, like perfect Catwoman storytelling, right? Like exactly what Selena would do.
Yeah.
My point is this: how can Titty Howard at times write Selena so dead on with characterization, but other times have her do things that we feel like are wildly out of character? That's what I don't get. Like, it doesn't make sense to me how, at times she's dead on with the characterization, and at other times it feels so wildly off. I don't know. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Titans number 12. This is from writer Tom Taylor. Art is by Lucas Meyer. Colors by Adriana Lucas. Letters by Wes Abbott. We had this... I can't remember what her name was, Vadrian or whatever her name was, this android. We actually see her as a little kid to kick off, get the second half of her battle with Titans. So what'd you think of this?
I feel like not a lot happened in this issue, but I guess that's not true. I guess a lot did, but it just seems, once again, it just seems very conveniently wrapped up. Every one of Tom Taylor's Titan stories is wrapped up very, very conveniently with very little, I don't know, just very little drama, I guess. But I guess this one has a little bit more drama because, Vanadia is her name, I think.
Yeah,
Vanadia. She ends up... last issue, she ended up stabbing Raven, and of course, who, unbeknownst to the Titans, is the Dark-Winged Queen, and the Dark-Winged Queen goes into her soul dimension, and heals herself, and then comes back this issue, and in anger, basically kills Vanadia just when Vanadia has been defeated by the Titans, and they're trying to ascertain who she is. Rachel comes back, i.e. the Dark-Winged Queen, and essentially, like, literally decapitates her. But and there's some debate amongst the Titans. Donna Troy's very upset with Raven. Why did you do that? But there's an open question amongst the Titans as to whether or not Vanadia was actually human or was she a robot. And so you can't really accuse Raven of murder because, well, you just chopped off the head of what appears to be a robot, but yet it appeared to have a human consciousness and capable of some degree of human compassion, at least in the impression of Donna Troy and, well, indeed, all the Titans, quite frankly. And now, one of the other aspects of this story that were, I think, very interesting is that the Dark-Winged Queen is having a conversation with Rachel, and Rachel's brother, I think, I can't remember her brother's name. That devil is he? Do you know what her brother's name is? That devil kid?
No, I can't remember.
I can't remember his name because they don't say it here. But they're trapped in the soul world and so the Dark-Winged Queen is basically indicates what her plans are. She wants to have terror. She wants to create her own titans of terror. She basically wants to befriend, i.e., control the Titans and in order and conquer the worlds and conquer the galaxy, and has all these aspirations, and it just really feels. I just don't really feel the gravitas. I just don't, because every one of these storylines just feels so small. It just feels small. It's wrapped up in an issue, and there's no complexity here. And at the end, the Darkwing Queen, grabs Dick Grayson by the throat, Nightwing, and asks him how he was able to, where was your mind? Because she couldn't read earlier. She couldn't read Dick Grayson's mind in a past issue, and we know that because Dick Grayson, unbeknownst to her, Nightwing has created his own sort of like Zerna mental persona, where he can go into his own mind, where he's hidden from detection from Raven's powers or the Darkwing Queen's powers, and she sort of maybe suspects that, and she confronts Dick Grayson at the end of this issue. And so again, it's interesting. This is a very well crafted, well plotted. It's paced well. It's beautifully drawn. It's just yet another. It's where the 12th issue of Titans, where I'm just not feeling excitement. It just feels boring to me still. It's not an exciting title. This is almost never is this on the top of my read pile. I read it because we review it straight up. And it's just the way it is. I just don't. This is one title. Tom Taylor, I love him as a writer for most of what he writes, but again, this Titans is just an ongoing. It's just blah to me, and there's nothing offensive about it. It's just I don't know. I would rather rant about something and have it offend me than have something bore me. This actually still bores me, and it doesn't really resonate with me. And when I think of how exciting I was, this should be, I hate to compare it, but they're supposed to be Justice League level, and they're decidedly not. They're boring, and this is not even as exciting. This is rehashing different versions of storylines we already got much better told under Perez and Woven, and I don't know why he's trying to reinvent the wheel. Why don't you tell some original stories that just feel a little bit better and raise the stakes a little bit, and don't be afraid to actually harm somebody or take some chances, because Taylor does that with out of continuity tales, but the moment he writes DC in continuity stories, Beast World wasn't that bad, but even then, really, what were the consequences of Beast World? It was, Beast Boy is fine. I don't know. I still say DC has a problem with actually understanding the concept of evil. Where we need evil, and we're just not getting it. Maybe Amanda Waller will actually turn out to be evil, but I've my worst. Unfortunately, if they're going to just try to make her a sympathetic villain, and that at the end she's she's just going to turn around and do the right thing and end up being good, and end up being like a typical Wonder Woman villain who has the worst rogues gallery in comics, where all of Wonder Woman's villains are broken. That's I don't enough. Give us evil. That's a slight digression there, but this was a meh comic for me this week.
I would argue that Titans has probably the most evil of anything. The Darkwing Queen is pretty evil. Trigon is pretty evil. The problem is, you said it yourself, it's boring, right? Yeah. Like, you want to talk about, okay, give us evil. Okay, it's 100%. Like, if somebody were to ask me, okay, what if I want to read like the most evil villain right now that's going on in comics? Okay, well, now that Failsafe is kind of, and you could argue that Failsafe is more fascism than straight up evil, but now that that has been resolved, where am I going to look? Well, first I'd say Green Lantern, the Lord Premier Theranos is, again, there's some fascism there, but leans more toward evil. But we want to talk about like traditional evil, comic book villain, whatever. It's Trigon, which means it's Darkwing Queen, which means you should be reading Titans. The problem is, I would never recommend anybody read this version of Titans because, in your own words, it's boring. I would argue because this is a story that we've had before. Why is it every time we get a Raven story, it's always Trigon? Like, we've talked about it in the past over and over. Every time it's a Raven story, it's got to be Trigon. It's been done. It's been done. Frankly, it's been done better. So why are we going through and rehashing? I keep waiting. We started from the beginning of this title, highly anticipating it, what Tom Taylor was going to do. And we're still waiting. Here we are 12 issues in, and we're still waiting for something of consequence, for something compelling, for something action packed. Like, I get the whole interpersonal relationships between the Titans and what have you. And he excels at that. And again, the era that he was inspired by, Wolfman Perez era, that was explored, but it was balanced out with action. It was balanced out very well with action. That's what's missing. Stakes, consequences, however you want to put it, that's what's missing in this title. That's what leads to it feeling boring. You're right. Beast World, at least, you could argue that there were no long-term consequences. My counter argument to that would be it's been decades since we've had big comic book crossover events that have long-term consequences. It just doesn't happen anymore, because you can't have long-term consequences when you go from one event to the next, to the next, to the next. That being said, at least it was big stakes, right? At least the world was at stake. At least there was a lot of stuff going on or what have you. And we are still going to see some fallout from what happened in Beast World in what happens with Absolute Power. That's what Amanda Waller's using as her excuse, right, for the Department of Sovereignty and what have you. How she's sort of a master power and is going to make her final move. So you could argue that there's some consequences from Beast World, but I digress. The point is, this main series of Titans, feels like it still hasn't gotten going. It's a touchy feely. Hey, let's talk about the relationship between the Titans more than anything. And then when we do get action, as we've gotten in this storyline, I will admit, it's action that we've seen before that feels redundant. That feels like it's mining from Trigon stories of the past. Will it eventually pay off? Well, it might have a different sort of ending that feels like okay, it was kind of worth the journey. But right now, every time I read Titans, I don't feel like it's a good use of my time, which that's just a really bad judgment on a comic, right? It's like, it's not that I'm like, I wish I hadn't read that, but just I could have read something else better. Now, some of the characterization has been interesting that Tom Taylor has given us, but like, it's almost like, and I know Tom is super talented or what have you, but I need you to push yourself a little more. I don't feel like you're challenging yourself to push new boundaries, not in your work for DC. You mentioned it when he's going and telling out of continuity stories. It feels like he does it better. Well, because it's fresh stuff. It's new stuff. It's not, he's creating story out of whole cloth rather than trying to, homage from the past or tie in with any particular thing. So I don't know if that's what it is. I will say the Lucas Meyer art is pretty solid. I did like this character. And I liked how it called back to her as this text the Titan thing back in the day. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. So we might see this character again. I would be open to that. I think she's got potential. Might we actually see her as a member of the Titans at some point? Yeah, I could see that. She does sort of have the traditional hallmarks of a comic book character, right? Like this built-in tragedy. Tio Maro basically took her humanity, took her life in a lot of ways, and transferred, her consciousness or what have you to this android. So you could see her, interesting story with her saying, how can I feel human? How can I ever be human? How can I be in a relationship? How can I be loved? How can I love someone else? That sort of thing. But again, while that might be an interesting story to tell with Venadia, it's also not anything we haven't seen before either. But wouldn't surprise me, because I think visually she's interesting. Her roots as kind of a Titan super fan are kind of fun. So there's potential there. But overall, as much as I hate to admit, I was so excited when Tom Taylor was taking on Titans that it hasn't been what I wanted it to be.
Yeah, not at
And
all.
that being
Not
said,
at
we're
all.
about to talk about Nightwing next. That, like, from the highs of the beginning of that series and how much I was enjoying it, like, it's not down to Titans level yet, but it's not far off. Like, it's become boring. It's become storytelling by, paint by numbers. Uh, so, I'm actually glad that Tom Taylor's leaving Nightwing, because maybe we can get something different, a different feel. Um, and maybe it was just the fact that there was so much emotion when his story arc started with Nightwing, and that was really great, and it was heartfelt, and it was really touching. But that you can't live there. You've got to have some contrast. You've got to have some up and down. And he has. Some of the action has been fun. Some of the things that Bruno Redondo has done in the art have been really fun. The one issue that was just one continuous panel and what have you was fun. But yeah, overall, I'm ready for a different taste for my Nightwing, because I'm kind of over what it's been recently. So it looks like the final story we're going to get, this Fallen Grayson storyline, is going to be the resolution of the Heartless storyline. So at least we're going to get that. And we find out in this issue, excuse me, that the Fallen Grayson title has maybe more than one meaning, as Heartless has framed Dick Grayson, and the police, Bloodhaven Police Department, captures Dick Grayson holding the Heartless gun that extracts people's hearts, wearing the Heartless mask, dressed like Heartless. So that's the cliffhanger ending. So we'll see how that all plays out. So written by Tom Taylor, art is by Bruno Redondo. Kaye Felipe helps out on inks. Adriano Lucas on colors. Wes Abbott on letters. Issue 115, which is part 2 of this, picks up right where the last issue left off. The fundraiser that they were all at with the fire that Heartless and his butler, servant, I don't know what you
Yeah.
want to call him.
Gerald.
So, yeah, Gerald. So Batman and Nightwing and Batgirl, all in their civilian guises. They're high profile. They're the ones holding the fundraiser. They can't exactly go into a broom closet, change, and come back out. Their absence would be conspicuous. So in their civilian disguises, or civilian identities, they're sort of managing the evacuation, telling everybody get out, make sure, if you came with family, make sure you leave with them, what have you. When Heartless, in his civilian identity, who, again, this was a schoolmate of Dick Grayson back in the day. They went to elementary school, and he was a bully. Grayson, when he started going to that school, called him on it. And there's reference to how many teeth Dick knocked out back in the day. But anyway, Heartless tells him, hey, I can't find Gerald. And so Dick goes, okay, Bruce, go and continue to clear the ballroom. I'm going to go find Gerald. Meanwhile, in the security room, we see Zuko. He's there. We know he's working with Heartless now. And so once the ballroom is clear, in the sprinklers that are, disguised in the smoke of the fire, they add gas. They add some knockout gas and some kind of like a hallucinogenic.
Yeah.
Benzodiazepine.
Benzodiazepine.
Yeah, which is an anesthetic.
Yeah.
And Heartless says to him, one of the anesthetics you're breathing inhibits your brains from forming memories. You're not going to remember any of this. So they knock him out, and their plan being to frame Dick Grayson as Heartless. So they knock him out. While he's knocked out, he flashes back. He remembers falling when he was a kid. That we saw that last issue, him falling from the ladder to the trapeze. But you think, okay, they're going to kill him, or what are they going to do? Whatever. No, they actually take him out, put him in an ambulance. I don't know how in the world they kept Barbara Gordon from getting into that ambulance. Bruce tries to go in the ambulance with them. Barbara tries to go there. We're like, no, there's no room. You can meet him at the hospital, what have you. So then they drive, a little ways away in this back alley. They're going to transfer him to another truck. That's when they realize he's Nightwing, when they start taking his clothes off. And Zuko's like, Dick Grayson is Nightwing, the two people I hate most, and he's in the world, and he's both. So they kill the guy that they had pretending to be a paramedic because they don't want anyone to have the knowledge that Dick Grayson is Nightwing other than themselves. Not sure how this is going to get put back in the bottle. How they're going to put this genie back in the bottle with Zuko, Heartless, and Gerald all knowing the secret identity. But yeah, then they proceed to basically take him up to a roof. There's a dead body there that's had his heart removed. And they have, and he was a reporter that was at the fundraiser. And Heartless's, gun, like I said, that's extracts people's hearts is laying there. And I'm going to blame it on the drugged Dick Grayson. I'm going to blame it on the effects of the gas and him being drugged. Why he would be stupid enough to pick up this gun, so now his fingerprints are on it. And of course, as soon as he picks it up, the Gotham or the Bloodhaven PD break through the door to the roof, and they say, "Put down the gun, Heartless." Blah blah blah, and Dick Grayson goes running off. He probably could escape because he's Dick Grayson, right? Why couldn't he escape running across the rooftops? But he can't jump right now, right? Which still hasn't been explained and kind of makes no sense to me. I get the whole flashback when he was scared to jump, but why did it manifest now? And why did it didn't manifest now, right? It manifested first when he was on the ship, with the whole the hold when they were going after that thing. So with B. So how did Heartless have anything to do with that? It doesn't. Yeah, again, a little bit of stretch. Maybe it'll all make sense in the end. But like I said, this title has come down from the heights, no pun intended, that it started at. But it does feel like it's finishing on a high. Like this was sort of an action-packed issue. You could make the arguments a bit cliched, right? Like we've seen villains do this time and time again. I'm going to frame my nemesis hero and make the police department think they're me. I have lost count of how many times this has been done. But if it's done well, it could still be entertaining. And overall, it does feel like this is going somewhere. The only nitpick I have with this particular issue is just it feels a little convenient. It feels a little bit like Heartless is able to kind of fool Dick Grayson just a little bit. Like, dude, this guy was a bully. This guy was a bully, and we all know people don't change. So why are you so trusting of him? Like, there's no suspicion, whatever. Dick falls for it pretty easily. And for that matter, Batman, world's greatest detective, he doesn't sense anything amiss. It seems like, I don't know, Barbara Gordon, I feel like even if they couldn't get in the ambulance, they would have been in a car following right behind it. So how was Zuko and Heartless and Gerald able to get that ambulance to this alley where, they meet and find out that Dick Grayson's Nightwing? That doesn't, it lacks authenticity, I guess you would say, or verisimilitude, your word. Because it just doesn't seem like it would be that easy to kidnap Dick Grayson. Not right in front of Barbara and Bruce. But anyway, that's a nitpick. Overall,
Yeah.
It feels like this is going to end on a high note. But yeah, it's sort of sad that I'm looking forward to Tom Taylor. You should never look forward to a writer leaving a book. That means you haven't been enjoying what they've been doing. And if Tom Taylor's Nightwing run hadn't started off so strong, I probably wouldn't feel that way. I wouldn't feel bad for being happy that he's going to be leaving the book. So anyway, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, I guess we should be thankful that this is the first time that Dick Grayson got in trouble and the rest of the DC universe didn't show up to save the day and save his life. Like that's the last time, right? That's always happens to Dick Grayson. Tom Taylor has because he's so well liked, everyone just shows up.
He's the Matt Damon of the DC universe.
Everybody loves
Matt Damon from Mars or from World War II. That's Dick Grayson.
Yeah, but it's funny. I actually think that this was a well-crafted story. This was very well crafted. I actually, at the end of the day, I will actually slightly disagree with you that this possesses just enough verisimilitude that I actually will accept the possibility that Bruce Wayne wouldn't hop into that ambulance and Barbara Gordon wouldn't immediately hop into the ambulance for the simple reason that the city loves Dick Grayson. Bloodhaven loves Dick Grayson. Everybody loves Dick Grayson. And there's no reason why they would necessarily suspect that Dick Grayson was not going to be okay. On the other hand, a counterpoint is if doesn't Batman know that Dick Grayson has his mask and his costume? Like, wouldn't Bruce Wayne say, "Hey, wait a minute, he might be wearing his Nightwing suit under his clothes"? You would think, and so wouldn't he hop into the ambulance then for sure, or what? Or what did Bruce Wayne do? Did Bruce Wayne just go home after the ambulance closed? I mean, I can't imagine he did that. So there's some questions here, but like you said, I'm willing to let that go. I think your word was nitpick. I think I'd agree. I'd let it go. I actually, I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was kind of wise of Heartless to sort of set him up. Talk about justice. Talk about this. It actually surprised me a bit, but it actually works out rather well that he wakes up and he's you can see like he's still recovering from the effects of the benzodiazepine, and he's waking up and he's in this costume. He sees the gun. He's probably disorientated. I mean, I can maybe see him, and he's lost the ability to leap. That seems a little bit forced. We still don't know why he can't leap, but all things are coming to a head just when you think things are going well in Dick Grayson's life. Now he's headed for a fall. And so, there's still a sense though. And I think I think part of this is, I think Bruno Redondo's art is so good, so crisp and so clean that it's hard to imagine any kind of darkness in Dick Grayson's life, because every time I pick up a Nightwing comic drawn by Bruno Redondo, everything is so bright and the colors pop. Everyone's so happy. Everything's so lucky. It's hard to imagine this being a dark story. And yet I kind of, it should be a darker story, but it doesn't look like one because of the bright, crisp art of Bruno Redondo. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but ironically enough, I actually think Bruno Redondo's art might not be suited for a fallen Grayson storyline. Maybe one that where he rises again, but falling down, because there's always a part of me that thinks, and maybe it's the after effect of Titans, but like say this Nightwing tale it's always been so happy. It's been so character driven rather than plot driven. All the plot lines have been conveniently wrapped up, so conveniently, just like in Titans. But I like that finally Dick Grayson has to actually fight his own battles. And let him fall. Let him not be rescued by Batman. Let him not be rescued by Batgirl. Let Dick Grayson actually do something on his own without help in his own title called Nightwing. Show me that, Tom Taylor. Maybe that's what we're going to get. I hope so. We shall see.
Yeah, we shall see. Okay, last book we're going to talk about in detail, Batman 149 from writer Chip Zdarsky, Michelle Bandini, and Steve Lieber are the artists. Nick Filardi on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. What are your thoughts on this?
I thought this was kind of a little bit boring and underwhelming again. It was just boring and underwhelming. I feel like this is an afterthought of a comic. We needed... We get to know what happened to Zur's Robin, who was the clone of Bruce Wayne, and I honestly, I could care less about what happened to the clone of Robin. I was just not interested in this. I'm not interested in this, and this was technically, on the surface, this should have been a comic book that maybe had some semblance of emotion. I mean, this is about a clone of Bruce Wayne who ages. There's a flaw in the cloning process. Bruce Wayne tries to get close to a clone of himself that is aging, and the clone ages, and by the end of the issue, the clone dies. And I felt nothing. Because we never knew the clone. We just met the clone, what, an issue ago, 2 issues ago?
Yeah.
And it just seems to me that I never felt nothing for it. There was nothing to really cling to. And I hate to say this, but of all the plot points that I wanted some elaboration on, this is the last. I could care less about. I wanted to tell me more about Vandal Commissioner Savage. Tell me more about how are they going to get the house back. Tell me more about the actual the unresolved plot threads from the issue. Where's the Riddler? I mean, what happened to the Riddler? What happened to Dr. Captio? Tell me the fallout from that. That's the stuff that's more interesting to me. Now, obviously, I expect that to be coming further down the road, but hint at that. But I guess I guess you have to wrap this up, I suppose. But you could have just had Zur disappear. Say Zur disappeared, or let me rephrase that. You could just say that the Robin of Zur, have him just disappear and pop up another day as an old man or something. I don't know. This just seemed like this really felt like it was filling up space to get us to the next issue that will bring us into absolute power. I'm being overly harsh, I admit, because the dialogue's decent enough. There was some moments where, quite frankly, for one issue, Chip Zdarsky did actually a good job. He made a vain attempt. Emphasis on vain, but a vain attempt, but a noble one to try to get me to have some feels for this clone of Bruce Wayne. It didn't work because I just don't care about him. Because how many, like it just seems, the only thing noteworthy in this entire issue was the fact that Zur, who is in fact smarter than Bruce Wayne, sarcasm there, but some truth, at least Zur was rich, and Zur had $3.12 billion in his bank account. And the Zur persona of Bruce Wayne was a rich man. So now Bruce Wayne is now a billionaire again. Thank God. Because, I don't know, I haven't really been a huge fan of this sort of middle-class Bruce Wayne. He's more interesting when he's a billionaire, because I like all those toys. Although, admittedly, Batman always seems to have toys even when he's broke. Why? Well, writing. But in any event, it was, I don't have much to say about this. I didn't find I didn't find it all that compelling, although I do note that there was one page here where it showed the older clone missing his hand, and it looks like Bruce Wayne got his hand back from his clone. So that was the reason to have the clone in the first place, was that so Chip Zdarsky could replace the mechanical hand that Batman had that he lost to Failsafe. Now Bruce Wayne has his hand back that he got from a clone of himself at the right age. So maybe that's a very convenient way to get Bruce Wayne at 100%. So there's that. So Bruce Wayne in this issue got his money back and he got his hand. So nothing like your right hand and $3.1 billion to cushion the blow leading into absolute power. So in that respect, we got a restoration of the status quo going into absolute power. I don't know, man. Still, it felt a little underwhelming to me, but what do you think?
Yeah, writer undoing his own supposed, big plot point, big impactful story point with Bruce losing his hand. I don't mind him having his hand back. I think he should have lost his hand in the first place, but yeah, you got to wonder, was it worth him losing his hand in the first place if you were going to undo it? Him undoing the James Tynion and giving Bruce his money back. What does it say about the disparity of wealth in the world these days that I see the $3.12 billion and I think, oh, that's not that much.
Yeah.
You got to have like 80 billion or 100 billion, like 3.12 billion is not enough. Not enough for him to be sick rich where he can do anything he wants. Yeah, ridiculous. But yeah, I appreciated that. I appreciated him building a new manor, Pennyworth Manor. He bought this old manor. He's refurbishing it. Wants everybody to live there. I guess that's what's going to happen first. I have mixed feelings about it. It's a cool idea, but at the same time, it's Batman. He needs to be in Wayne Manor with the Batcave, whatever. He confronts Vandal Savage in this issue, tells him keep the house. He doesn't care. I don't know that I agree with that. As far as this Zur Robin and not caring about him, so the fact that he is a clone of Bruce, you say given no reason to care, but he is Bruce, and he does have Bruce's memories, even though he himself, the clone himself, is like, yeah, I have the memories, but I haven't lived the experience. So it's kind of a weird place to be in. But I think we're supposed to look at him as, a surrogate for Bruce, seeing Bruce die or whatever. And that's what's supposed to elicit the feelings or whatever. And the art is from Michelle Bandini. She's a fantastic artist, by the way. She's the next superstar. She's the next Daniel Sampere in my mind. She is so good. I don't know if she's as fast as Daniel. That might hold her back a little bit, but because she's not even the only artist on this issue. Steve Lieber finishes it, so I don't know if she ran out of time or what. That's the only thing that can hold her back from being a superstar in my mind. But anyway, her depictions of this clone of Bruce aging are, are are pretty impactful, pretty interesting. But I take your point. Like, we know it's a clone, we know it's not the real Bruce, so why should we care, what have you? But there are some heartfelt moments, and Zardaski does a good job with the dialogue. And as far as tying up the loose end or whatever, and I could see a lot of people agreeing with you, like, why do we care? He could have disappeared, come back at some other point, whatever. Here's the thing: like, if it wasn't tied up, though, they'd be the first ones going, well, what happened to the clone? A continuity. You never mention what happened to the clone. You leave the loose end, whatever. So it's kind of like, man, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you don't tie it up, people complain. If you tie it up, people complain. So I don't know. I guess the lesson is, Chip, you can't make everybody happy all the time, or what have you. I do agree with you in terms of this feeling like a little bit of a filler issue. He does get his money back. He does get his hand back. It does set up this idea of a mansion in the city, and I take Bruce's point of saying, yeah, we're out in Wayne Manor outside of the city. I liked it when I was in the brownstone. I was in the center of the city. This is where we need to be. He does have a point there, but I don't know. Maybe you can just have Gotham as a city continue to expand, like a lot of cities do. So even though Wayne Manor was outside on the outskirts of the city, now it's actually in the city because the city's continue to grow around it. Seemed like a better solution to me, but whatever. I want to write that story. It's not particularly compelling to talk about urban expansion. But yeah, we'll see. 150 is the next issue. I'm sure they're going to do some special with 1,000 covers and what have you. And it'll, like Rocky said, it'll lead into Absolute Power. And then when that's all said and done, maybe sometime around September, maybe we'll get back on regular stories, or will that be an Ultimate line? Like, who knows? Nobody knows where it's going from here. But I don't really expect us to have a true sense of where Zardaski is going to go next with the Batman title because of all the tie-ins and what have you. So it's a wait and see at this point to see what happens next. But as far as Bruce getting his fortune back, and whether 3.12 billion is a lot or not can be debated. But like you said, it was such a cool idea that Tynan had to take away his money. I don't know if it needed to be the Joker that got it, and then obviously eventually it went to like Pennyworth got a bunch of it, Lucius Fox got a bunch of it, Wayne Tech, what have you. But yeah, we never truly saw the consequences. He never didn't have a Batmobile. He never didn't have a costume that was falling apart, where he was like wrapping his hands with like bandages or gauze or something. That would have been cool. There were so many things you could have done to take Batman back to basics. But it just goes to show that with the power creep that the characters had, I guess the writers didn't feel like they could do it. So my point being, why did you bother to take his money away to begin with? Because it never had an impact. Him losing the mansion had an impact, right? He went and lived in the city. We saw that in the Mariko Tamaki detective run. But no, it never. All of a sudden, you could make the argument that he was even more well equipped, because when he didn't have the Bat Cave, he had all these mini, what do you call them, micro caves all throughout the city. All of a sudden, he had motorcycles, he had this, he had that. It was just dumb. Like, don't take his money away. It's a central part of the character. It helps explain so many things about how he's able to have so many gadgets and toys and what have you. And if you are going to take the money away, then take it away. Truly take it away and make it matter. This was just dumb. It's been something that's bugged me for years about, he doesn't have whenever it's convenient, they'll mention it. He doesn't have his fortune. But it doesn't matter. He's still traveling the world. He still has cars and clothes, and he's still going to all the parties. Like, it's just dumb. So anyway, that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail, everybody. Like I said, as far as collections this week, there's 3. Super Sons, The Complete Collection, Volume 1, trade paperback, which collects Super Sons 1 through 14, Super Sons Annual 1, Super Sons Dino Mutt, number 1, Superman, the 2016 title, numbers 10 through 11, and 37 through 38, Teen Titans 15, and a story from the DC Rebirth Holiday Special, number 1. That's all the Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason, Jorge Jimenez Super Sons stuff. So if you're a big fan of Super Sons, that's what you're going to want to pick up. It is a very, very large volume, 536 pages for $50. Uh, there's also Batman Scooby-Doo Mysteries, Volume 4, which collects Batman Scooby-Doo Mysteries issues 7 through 12. And then finally, Tales from the Dark Crisis trade paperback, which collects a bunch of the Tales from the Dark Crisis anthologies. I don't know that I would recommend that, but it is out there if you're so inclined. I'm not even
Yeah.
going to read off what
Yeah.
what's included in it, because the thing is, it's so
Yeah.
many. Like let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 anthologies that each have 5, 6 stories. So you're going to get a ton of different stories from a ton of different creators. Um, like you're going to get a lot of material. Now
Yeah.
the quality of that material, that's
Yeah.
another story altogether.
Now it's
So
convoluted. They don't make sense. The stories contradict each other on major plot points. It's a disaster. I don't recommend Tales from Dark Crisis. I really don't. Avoid it like the plague. Just pick up Dark Crisis. Dark Crisis will be confusing enough, but at least you'll get some great art.
100% true. So, all right. Book of the week, Rocky. What do you got?
For me, I said before it's going to be John Constantine, Hellblazer. By far, that's that's probably the first time. That's probably the first for me that I've put that on my list for pick of the week. But I love what Cy Spurrier's done here. Cy Spurrier, I haven't always understood the flow of his narratives, but this one I had so much fun at this. From even the dialogue, which at times I found challenging, I found hilarious. I love that Dr. Diablo shows up and his former patient Iggy Ballot, former comic book writer, an addicted comic book writer who's infected, who was obsessed with obtaining a grain of sand from Morpheus, and then it corrupts his mind, corrupts his soul, and the breaking of the fourth wall as he steals Hellraiser, Constantine's cigarettes, and then tries to steal more grains of sand before ultimately being destroyed because of his narcissism and his way of his insistence that his story must always be fed. He's like the ultimate crazy comic book writer. It makes me wonder if Cy Spurrier wasn't thinking of his insane, darker self when he wrote that character. And I just want to give props to Cy Spurrier. I had a lot of fun reading it, and definitely my pick of the week. What? And
Yeah,
yourself?
I it's so tough, and it's not tough because there's like some really standout books this week. It's that everything was sort of just at the same level. Everything was just sort of average for me. So yeah, maybe Wonder Woman 10, but again, this is like my least favorite issue of this series so far. So it's really deserving to be pick of the week. I thought Batman was pretty fun. I thought Nightwing was not back to the level of the best issues of that series, but certainly trending in that direction.
Yeah.
Um,
You're gonna
so
pick one?
I yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Wonder Woman, only because of the three, it has the best art. But typically, when I pick a book of the week, one of my criteria is okay. So I pick this, and somebody who hasn't been reading the series or isn't a fan of the character will go and pick up that issue and read it and go, "Oh yeah, that was a really good comic." As much as I think Wonder Woman is a really good series and it has fantastic art, the thing about it is, like, I don't know that somebody who's not familiar with Wonder Woman and Cheetah can pick up issue 10 and not be confused by it. Like your point, like why did they fight for 3 days or whatever, and then when Cheetah finally had the upper hand, then she just stopped fighting? Didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I gotta pick something. So I'm gonna pick Wonder Woman 10 with a special nod to the art by Daniel Semper and a Kite Man appearance. So that's got to be worth a pick of the week, right?
Sure, why not?
Yep. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget Absolute Power with Mark Waid coming up later this week. So be sure to tune in for that. That'll be over on the Comic Source YouTube channel. Or if you like to listen to the audio-only version of the Comic Source, go to wherever you get your podcast, whatever platform or app, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe to where all the content comes out, both on the YouTube channel and the audio feed. And then obviously you can go back and listen to the whatever 2,500 plus episodes from the past if you are so inclined. If you are listening to us on the audio feed and you haven't subscribed to Rocky's channel yet, we really would appreciate you heading over and subscribing, ring the notification bell, leave some comments below what was your book of the week? Let us know. We love to get into conversations in the comments. And obviously, by ringing that notification bell, you'll know whenever Rocky puts out new content. You subscribe so you don't miss any of that content, and it really helps out. So Comic Space Boom, ! To join us here every week so you can see visuals of the books as we're talking about them. So that's going to do it for this episode. Any last thoughts, Rocky?
Yeah, I want to encourage people to go check out, go to Kickstarter and check out our friend Trevor Lankevich, Trevor Fernandez Lankevich. He's got a great series called Rise Issue 1 and Rise Issue 2. His Kickstarter starts. I posted a video of that. It's pinned to my YouTube channel, Comic Boom. Check it out. Check out Rise number 1 and Rise number 2. The Kickstarter went live today, and so I encourage people to check that out.
Yeah, we'll have Trevor on soon to talk about it. So if you're curious to learn more about that, just tune in later this week, and you'll be able to get some details on that. So that's going to do it, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.